This release from Dina Wakley in Ranger includes 8 new colors of gloss sprays. They are Aloe, Apricot, Carnation, Gilt, Heather, Medieval, Mineral, and Sand. We have them in stock as a set or they're available individually. As always, you'll receive the 15% everyday discount on gloss sprays and all other eligible products. Most of these new colors are pastels, which combine really well with the darker hues from the initial release. Now we have lots of values to work with from light to dark, and that creates contrast, which is always a good thing. So let's, as always, start with the most basic. This is Apricot. There's a mixing ball in there. It's important that you shake the bottle and let the mixing ball do its thing. Nothing says you have to shake it endlessly, but it doesn't hurt. And I've taken a page out of Diane Reevely's book. I store them on the side like this. It's much easier to get whatever collects here back up and moving in the liquid than it is when it collects on the bottom of the bottle. So with that said, the other thing that you should get in the habit of doing is cleaning the sprayers after you get through. I wipe them with paper towel. If I'm walking away for 5 minutes, not so much, but in between, if there's an hour or something, then I'm definitely going to wipe them down. Put the cap on is important. And if you find that one of these gets clogged, what I do is pick it out with your fingernail out of the orifice of the spray head, and then I use some 91% isopropyl alcohol. If cleaning this out with your fingernail doesn't make it spray correctly, the alcohol generally is enough to clear that out and you get back to a normal spray pattern. So there are 2 metallic colors in this release. There's Medieval and Gilt, and because they're gloss sprays, they're obviously shiny in a different way than they would be as a metallic. So the dark color on here is the Medieval. They do have some shimmer inside, so for example, alright, so this is our smooth and sturdy cardstock. I actually find that for the nebula effect, which is what I know a lot of you are interested in, I get the best results on this. I don't get as good a result on watercolor. So I'm going to shake both of these and kill 2 birds with 1 stone and do them at the same time, and then just go ahead and give them a spray. Now you can see that it kind of makes that nebula effect on this paper. It sort of happens as you spray, although I will tell you that that effect is negated if you spray too much on. That's kind of just been my experience. So this has to do with the coating that's on this paper, which makes life a lot easier. Alright, so I'm just going to pop that over there. Grab another piece of Smooth and Sturdy, and again, to just kind of keep this under control, I like to put tape on the back, because while I'm standing here trying to show you something, if the paper curves and the color runs off, well, that doesn't really accomplish what we're trying for. So I'm just going to quickly put the caps back on these and put them to one side. Now I like to do this with lighter colors and then darker colors. You really need that change in value in order to be able to see the contrast. So let's bring in, this is Aloe and Mineral, and then I think I will come in with, well, maybe I'll bring in some of the Medieval. I have some Night here. Let's give that a whirl. So again, a quick shake with both of these, and you really don't do yourself any favors to put a really thick layer of color on here, because as I said, I don't find that the nebula-like effect is created as easily if you overdo the color. Alright, so I haven't used this Night in a while. Let's hope I did a good job the last time I put it away. And come in, oops, sorry, this is Medieval. Come in and start to spray, and you can see we have that nebula-like pattern forming here. Now where it's, well, that's not sticking. Where it's not forming, you get some really interesting effects as the spray kind of, as the little droplets kind of move around in the color that's already there. I would let this dry, and see this puddle here, how I'm not getting the nebula effect? I find that too much is not a good thing in this case, so keep that in mind. Alright, let's get this out of here. Now, there's stuff left on here. I'm not going to pick this up for the moment, but let me bring in a couple of others that I've done. So this is a whole nother story. This is one that you can see that there's a fair amount of dark on here. There was Carnation underneath, that's what the light color is. And then I came back with, this is Eggplant. So this is one of the original releases. And then I used some of the Medieval over that. This is, I want to say that there's some Mineral under here and maybe some of the Heather color, which is the light purple, and then definitely Night on top of that. So you can see that you get all these variations, And I cannot emphasize enough that too much of the spray is not a good thing. Now here's a little tiny, well, this is a 3x4 page, and that because there's not a lot of contrast between the light and the dark here, you don't see those cell-like structures forming quite as much, but they're still forming there. Here's another one that I did, again on a 3x4 page, and here's a couple of others. This is, again, something else. So, you know, when you do this, you'll have to experiment. I can't promise you that the nebula thing happens immediately. It didn't for me. I had to really play around a little bit and find the best way to do that. But what I've discovered, again, is less spray is definitely better for that effect. Now this is an example of what happens when you take what's left and you pick it up like this with what I always think of as Tim Holtz's Distress Wrinkle-Free technique. He taught that at Ranger U both times that I was there, and it's one of my most favorite things, and it's really my fallback option for getting background colors in place. Before I move on to my iteration, my take on Tim Holtz's Distress Wrinkle-Free technique, I did want to bring this back in to show you. So this is the piece that I worked on in the last segment where I sprayed Medieval over the top of Mineral and Aloe. And because I didn't press it down when I laid it down, there was tape on the back, there's not now, it did curl. It kind of curled like this as it was drying, and gravity kind of pulled these elements down. So I've got the circles that are that nebula-like effect, but I've also got this patterning that happened as the gloss spray ran and it dried. So interesting things can happen when you least expect it. Alright, so wrinkle-free and kind of my fallback option. I use this technique a lot. I like the result that you get from this. Now if I wanted to spray over the top of this, I certainly could do that, but I like the way that this looks. So I might treat this as an initial layer and then do something else with a stencil or whatever on top of it. So with that said, let me bring in another piece of, this is again white, smooth and sturdy. I'm going to use Carnation, Aloe, and Mineral. I'm going to give them a shake. And then I'll probably bring in some turquoise as a darker color just to add a little bit of variation. So I'm going to put some of this down, grab my paper towel. I'm not going to do a ton here because this is a technique that I use a lot. You've probably seen me do this. So what I'm going to do is spray the pink on the other side so that I don't get green and pink mixing to make, you know, something that's not terribly attractive. So there's plenty of spray there. I'm not going to wet this, I'm going to use it straight out of the bottle as it is. And all I'm going to do is come and just tap this in those puddles. And you can see that you get these patterns that form. It really depends on how you place this face down in the puddles. Now the more color there is on here, the more you get this larger area of saturation that happens. And again, this really cool patterning. So as I start to use this up, and there's less on here, I'm going to get more discrete dot patterns like this. So less spray generally gives you something that looks more like this, and more spray is going to give you a larger swath of color that kind of blends like this. Now oftentimes I'll do multiples of these, and then we'll come back and add another layer. So I'm just going to grab, again, another piece of the white, smooth and sturdy, and lots of dots this time. Where I'm really pushing, they're starting to spread out a little bit. But what's nice about this is that this is going to dry glossy. Now, not quite as glossy as this, because there's a much heavier concentration of color on here. But if you find, let me find mine. So if you come and look at this one, and I hold this into the light so it reflects, you can definitely see the gloss in areas. It's just not quite as super duper glossy. All right, let me wipe this up. Now, I could come back and put a darker color in here. I'm just trying to kind of keep it neat as much as possible. So for a little bit of a kick, let's put some of the turquoise on there. Oh, and what the heck, let's put a little bit of the eggplant. I really do like this color. All right, that's enough of that. Now I can see that this sprayer needs a little bit of attention, so I'll hit that with some of the 91% alcohol afterward. All right, this is the one that's probably the closest to dry, only because there's less color on there to begin with. So let's just come and tap on another layer. And again, this is a nice background. It's the start of whatever it is that I want to do, and because it's gloss sprays, I'm going to get that gloss that inherently goes along with it. So this is 8 new colors of Dina Wakley's wonderful gloss sprays. They're really a nice product, one that you can get some very different results with from really anything else, because there are not a lot of other products that work like this. 8 new colors, a total of 20 now in the gloss spray palette, and especially these lighter pastel hues really expand your creative options.